Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. I'm bringing to you a fashion designer of note, gentleman by the name of Kanyo Molale. But before we start our conversation, just hit that like and subscribe button right away, right this minute, so you don't have to remember later. Please do me that favor. Only listen to the rest of the conversation when you've subscribed. Please, just a special request. Thank you very much indeed. Welcome to the studio, Mr. Kanyo Molale.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I nearly said Kanye for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons. I know.
Just introduce yourself briefly.
My name is, my full name is Kanyo Molale. That's where the Kanyo comes from. I am a 27-year-old fashion designer stroke public relations and marketing specialist in Gaborone. I'm a dual stream professional, so I do both at the same time. How? That's another conversation for another day.
Yes.
I grew up in Gaborone. This is where I spent most of my life.
Okay.
I was born in Mahalape. And I am the firstborn of Me Molale, who also resides here in Gaborone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's cover the training and academic side. Where did you go? What did you do?
I studied here in Botswana. Most of the studying I did here in Botswana. I was at the University of Botswana studying not public relations, but rather marketing. Public relations is what I streamed into after varsity, but then I picked up fashion design along the way, and it's something that I've been doing the both of. I'm not formally trained in fashion design, more self-trained, industry-trained experience, but I've been picking them up and handling both at the same time.
Okay.
So that's been a journey on its own.
Okay. When did you start in terms of studying it as a business?
Starting it as a business, I really commenced operations 2017. That's when I started to open Kanyo M trading as under Kanyo Enterprises. That's the registered name. So we started it as a bespoke clothing business, mainly specializing in...
What does bespoke mean?
Bespoke means tailoring and couture or made to measure. So basically most of what we do is custom made designs for our people, and usually the clothing that we make is of a certain standard, and we apply a bit more creativity as opposed to maybe someone who just do normal garments for everyday use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Batswana fashion conscious?
Batswana are learning to become fashion conscious. I think sometimes we tend to, as creatives or creative individuals, we want to dictate to other people how they should take our craft, but really they are understanding it from a consumer point of view, and the reviews we're getting is people are starting to understand what it is. They're starting to notice the differences between what could be art in fashion and what is day-to-day fashion or day-to-day way. Yeah.
And what really inspired you in terms of what motivated you to get into fashion?
Well, fashion design, it's a lot of things that kind of came at me and I found an interest in. First of all, I think one of the things is self-expression. I needed an outlet for self-expression. I'm not one to talk a lot. So I think fashion design became something for me where I'm able to express myself in a way that I like to think of it as an understated way of telling somebody about yourself without saying anything. That's why I think I was interested in fashion design, but also the ornateness, for lack of a better word, of coming up with something out of your mind and then trying to emulate that and create something out of that. When you think about it, it's quite scientific in a way.
Yes.
Because you're trying to emulate something mechanical to make it fit for something that is more biological, which is the human body.
Yeah.
So that is my canvas, but really my medium is fabric.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, the way this talking about fashion brings a smile to your face. I suspect that it's something about which you think a lot. It's almost part of your DNA.
It is, and it actually, when you say that, it took a long time for me to understand that a bit of myself is put into everything that I do. I always thought in the beginning, when I started producing clothing, I always thought it's just a garment and it's just going to be there on its own. But inherently, you realize that you put your kind of character into it, you put your soul into it, and that's really you in a room, and you're speaking without you being there. That's essentially what it is. So yeah, every design kind of carries my spirit with it wherever it goes.
Now, talk about the current ensemble, what you have on now.
Yeah.
What does it speak to us? I'm sure you thought about it. I know that you fashion designers, there's thought behind everything. What message are you portraying? Starting with this thing you have here.
I didn't think we'd get into what I'm wearing, but everything here has kind of its own story. And well, I pieced it together. Well, the jacket is something, it's denim, which is like not your usual go-to. If you're thinking corporate, yes. It's like a pink wash. It's like a stone-washed pink. And then, the staple, which is like a crisp white shirt, which is a staple across corporate. Then the tie.
The tie speaks to me because it's
pizzazz
colorful.
to it with the sequins.
Yeah.
I mean, they're black, but like they still carry a story.
So there's always pizzazz somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. No, I could figure that out. Now, what does the business stand for? What is the business ethos? Is it something you can talk about?
Yes, it is. Well, our business, what it really stands for is when we started Kanyo M, or when I conceptualized it, and we decided at the beginning, you kind of create a DNA of what the business is about. What do we create? What are we here to address? And one of the things I realized is that as a country, as Botswana, we don't really have a voice in terms of creativity. So I wanted something that is able to speak to my history, my culture, and my heritage, but at the same time be a vehicle that can carry society forward, which is what fashion is. And so we molded something that kind of carries our identity as a nation to other parts of the world. So we wanted to create an identity for ourselves in terms of the fashion sphere, what it is we are really bringing to the party that is distinctly different from any other place, whether it be Paris, South Africa, Nigeria, Japan. So we needed to have our kind of own DNA and our kind of own stamp to say this is us and this is what we do. Yeah.
And what is that? If you can pin your finger on it and put your finger on it, what is that distinguishable variation, that distinguishable thing that forms part of our identity?
I think
is it one thing, or it's a number of things?
It's a number of things, and they tie in together because really I work with the character of who we are. I can't pinpoint it and just say it's Letisi alone because it has to function with something else. So it's essentially I incorporate our character as a nation into things. I incorporate our history and how we came to how we are into what I do. And you kind of carry that spirit collectively into what we do, into the clothing that we make, into the identity of us as a brand. For example, our logo for the company, is the K for Kanyo, but then you'll realize the distinctness because the stroke of the K is actually from the kudu horn, which is actually my totem.
Yes.
So distinctly on its own, you just look at that already, just tells you already a story about, and you are interested to know more.
Okay.
So it's not just, funky.
Okay. Do you ever bring in what is talked about the most about Botswana? I'm talking about the colors, blue, black, and white, for instance, the zebra, the rain, pula, and of course the diamonds. The things that typically are promoted or talked about when you're thinking about Botswana.
Yes, I'd like to incorporate those a lot. Those are usually what you've just mentioned are usually my first reference points. But I like going deep in Botswana and finding little gems that people don't really realize. For example, the first collection that I did, which actually kind of blew me out of the water, the inspiration for that was African traditional belief. It's considered a taboo topic. People don't necessarily talk about it a lot. But it inspired that collection.
You're talking about traditional healers.
Yes.
You're talking about Dinani.
Dinani as well.
You're talking about Maele.
Yes.
You're talking about, Letafula, things that are just...
Yes, but actually, most of the inspiration is from the African traditional belief, but in a more Kalanga setting.
Yes.
So you're talking Mwali, the gods of the rain, for example. I think one of the distinct things that come to my head when I think about that is, the rain dance that they do, that really inspired me because that's like the soundtrack to the whole thing.
So how do you then incorporate that into fashion?
Well, the nitty-gritties of it. For example, there was the skirts that they wear, the pleated skirts. We took
as
that
they move the hips.
As they move the hips, we took that and we incorporated that. There was a pleated skirt that we had in the collection, as well as a smaller one, which is like a modern interpretation of that, which is something that can go from day wear to night wear. And then we worked around with the prints a lot in the collection. They tend to have this kind of hand painted effect that they have, which I feel like is very distinct and something that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Definitely, I know that you won't find something like that.
Is there something in your background that made you choose the Kalanga culture as the main focus as you spread to the rest of the country?
Not necessarily. I think, like I said, it was being inspired by the sights and sounds of everything around me. So you see that it inspires something, it inspires a thought, and then there's a train of thought that comes after that, and you explore the idea even further, and you never know what comes up. With creativity, it's not really a linear process. So I would see this today, then tomorrow I see that, and then collectively that becomes like a thought bubble, and then you kind of explore it and what is available.
That actually leads us to something, it's a segue into the next point about the design process.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at people like Yves Saint Laurent. I'm looking at people like David Tlale in South Africa.
Yes.
People like that. What is it? What is it about the design process that attracts people like this? And what is it about them that you use, if any, to do your own sort of to undertake your own design process?
Yeah.
In other words, just tell us about the design process and what influences it in the context of the people I mentioned, for instance.
Like I said in the beginning, I remember when we were speaking earlier, we mentioned that your spirit kind of you carry yourself in everything that you make. Every designer kind of has their own process of how they conceptualize something from beginning to end. David Tlale might have his own way. Yves Saint Laurent might have had his own way. Madame Chanel would have had her own way of doing things. Each one of them has their own, for lack of a better word, but to tend to call it Botswana thing. But it's how it is. It's the process.
The creative process, yes.
Some would want to go and be secluded somewhere for like a week and then come back and then focus on something. Others would want to be within whatever they're trying to do and really get their hands dirty and, you know, enjoy that process and go through it. While others would find inspiration in just the small things, like what I think mine is that just the small thing, and that small thing kind of just blows up into like a big idea because you explore the small thing and, you know, you find little interesting things about it. I like getting into context of the things that I do. So with African traditional belief, I remember I went and studied more about that. Why is it that way? Why do people do it that way? Is it different in Botswana? Is it different in South Africa?
Do you immerse yourself in the culture, or you go into the library somewhere and find books?
I went to the library somewhere and I actually found books that currently our world allows us to just get information at our fingertips. We live in a time where now African traditional healers are now on YouTube, for example, on Instagram, on Twitter. So you can get to know more about what they do and why they do the things they do and how they that process that they go through. And you get to uncover a lot of things. In terms of spirituality, for example, I got to uncover a lot. I got to learn a lot. And not only did it just guide that process, but it also guided my personal beliefs as well. Because I feel like with every collection, you've got to get something from that kind of inspires you, and you carry that with you for life.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the actual designs that you've come up with, is there any 2-3 items that you say that, look, these speak to me the most, or the market has responded most positively to? Any particular designs?
Yes, they were. They were. I can think of a few that were that kind of blew up, and it's usually the ones that you did not expect to blow up that much, because you know you pour yourself into something else, and then they see something else, and they kind of love that more, and they go with that. But yeah, from the same collection, we had a graphic tee. It was a graphic tee that had a print.
Graphic tee.
Graphic
tee.
Yeah, graphic T-shirt, which was made from scratch. We did not go and just print it. We had to make it from scratch, and then we had the print on there. But we also had the big logo ya Kanyo M in the front of it, and people really loved that T-shirt. And unfortunately, we only produced 30 of them. But I still get requests to get more of those.
And you have no intention of producing more?
I don't at the current time. No, I don't think I'll be going back. Yeah.
Do you want them to be collector's items, or do you want to go the direction of even creating an NFT about them?
Yes, I would love to actually, because those T-shirts, I think they are more special than I think they are, because for me personally, for the brand especially, they're kind of like a turning point. So it's like that T-shirt that
but you only sold it to 30 people.
Yeah.
But it went viral because it was on social media.
It did, funny enough. And when we shot it the first time, we did not think it would, because like I said, we had other items that we thought would do better than the others, but that one did really well.
I'm surprised you picked on my thought about NFTs. What are your thoughts there? What do you want to do there? Have you thought about it enough to go on to share?
With NFTs?
Yeah.
Not really.
Not at this point.
Not at this point in time.
It's just a fantasy at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. But any other products that you're excited about? Any other pieces?
Any other? Well, in terms of growing the brand, we would like to get into accessories. We have a lot of those resources here in Botswana. I'd love to get into that, especially leather products. We'd love to get into leather production. It's a resource that we have in Botswana in abundance. I'm surprised after this long, we still don't have a luxury accessories line distinctly from Botswana. I mean, the leather is from here. You know, that's something that I'll be interested to go into.
Let's talk about challenges. You know, those challenges, positive or negative. in the context of COVID, for instance, share a little bit about the pre-COVID challenges, COVID related, and I want to say post-COVID, but we're not post-COVID yet.
Yeah, not really.
But we're hoping we're just getting out of it. We're hoping.
Well, pre-COVID, 2019, end of 2019, we had our eyes set on doing so much as a company. We had growth prospects, not just in Botswana, but just across the border as well. We're looking to get into the continent and, striking down a path for ourselves. But unfortunately, that came to a standstill. And it means everything that we had planned to do never actually conceptualized. But the beauty that was COVID, even though nothing much was happening. I remember the beginning of 2020, I think I only had 10 clients from that period of time. That time was a time for us to look back internally and look at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats that we have, basically, and kind of reset, like where are we now, where do we want to go, and how do we get there. So during this period, I still think we're still in that period, we would like to kind of set a new path in the new COVID world. This is what we want to do, this is where we want to go. And I would like to say we have our eyes set on not anything too different from what we had initially thought, but I think we have a better way of getting there. I think you should expect a lot from us.
You look at brands like Louis Vuitton, you look at brands like Pierre Cardin and whatnot. What is it about them that has endured for so long, and what can your business do to replicate that model that has worked? Because there's a guy called Ortega, if I'm not mistaken. He's one of the 5 richest men in the world, and he owns fashion brands, including, if I'm not mistaken, Louis Vuitton.
Yeah, but I think Bernard Arnault is also the other one. Yes.
Those guys. What will it take if you were to get your brand to that level?
Well, wow, that's a. Where do I even start? Well, with the brands that you just mentioned are what we in the fashion world consider heritage brands. Heritage brands have endured the test of time. Some of them are more than 100 years old. Some of them have been there before the First World War. Some only started coming into the scene after the Second World War, like Christian Dior, for example. Chanel came around, I think, the First World War, towards the end of it or during. Yes. Those brands have managed to sustain the length of time because they came at a time where the world was kind of opening up again, pretty much like what's happening now. And they kind of set their mark into what they were offering the new world in terms of what is dress. So you look at Christian Dior, and he was offering a new look that was post-World War. And it's something that still inspires most of designers to this day. You have Chanel, who came up with, she didn't come up with, but she just revolutionized dress for women at the time, because the men were at the war, so women had to take up male-oriented jobs. So the plumbers were women now. So which means women started wearing trousers, for example, as opposed to just looking pretty. And and she was somebody who I think is in the fashion world is a feminist icon, because she really rooted for women to be empowered and to take a place in society, to be something out of themselves. So
the
you
brand
see,
was very revolutionary in that sense.
Yes, in that sense. So so brands like that, and that's why they're called heritage brands, is because they've managed to inspire generations and generations after that. So they were not just looking at selling what was there at the time, but they were looking at trying to revolutionize and move society forward in a way through dress, just by dressing up, because that's how we speak to our surroundings, that's how we speak our minds, is through dress.
Yes, but my question, I'll repeat it, is how do we get Kanyo to that level?
Well, getting to that level would require a lot of things, I'd like to believe. It's a lot of things, considering where we still are. But one of the things that comes to mind, and I think that's the first thing, that's been bothering me a lot, is moving away from, well, the shift of mindset from fashion just being a hobby to more being of a career choice. Once we move away from that and we realize the fashion tourism can be something that can assist us as a country to move forward, then I know we can make headway in a lot of ways. Also, another thing, and this is talking to the industry as a whole, is not just focusing on the making of clothing, but rather the developing the value chain that is fashion, because it cannot exist as just making clothing on its own. You have above us the people who make the fabric, you have below us the people who retail the fashion. So currently our market in Botswana is quite flat because it's just exists in one level. We only make, but when you think about it, most of the things that we have to get from as far as China, as far as from South Africa, from where we don't have anyone here who's producing something that we can make and we can call distinctly ours. Like herringbone material is historically British. You have your silk, which is Asian because it's from the silkworm. So we need to create value chains that are able to assist us in creating distinctly Botswana products, products that are able to speak about Botswana wherever and distinctly carry our image. I think
that is a process that the likes of you have started, and in this regard, I'm just wondering whether there's any concrete plans to go international to aggressively target, let's say, the continental market first, and then the international market.
We do have those plans. We have plans of every step you kind of take one step at a time. You can't do it all at the same time. But we have plans. Currently, we have plans of going regional. That is the SADC region, which I think it's something of a 5-year plan, because we intend on penetrating each market differently. Each market tends to have how it behaves differently, and you need to get time to understand and find a pathway that can work for you. So our 5-year plan is to penetrate this region and then move from this region into other parts of Africa and essentially go out into the world. And with social media and digital marketing today, I think it can really assist us in going far by that regard.
You seem to be a fashion historian, and you seem to be really clued on socially. So I'm going to throw in a controversial issue that is doing its rounds at the moment and get your views. Recently, women, the issue of a woman going to the kotla with the trousers, it's generally taboo. But recently we've had a situation where there was drive-in vaccine arrangements in the kotla area, where women would come for their shots or whatever in queue there wearing their pants in the kotla. And that's a combination of the traditional dynamic at play and the dress dynamic and the woman's liberation dynamic at play
as well.
What is your take on all these three coming together in that situation? What if you were asked to make a commentary when the debate was raging, what would you have said?
It's something that is very close to my heart. It's something that I've thought about a lot. My comments are not going to be taken very very greatly by a certain group of people. Others are going to favor it more. But what I would like to say is that with fashion, like I said, fashion propels society forward. The fact that we're even having this conversation, that's a great thing, because it means people are now thinking critically about it. And also the symbolism that is pants in the kotla. Is it as disrespectful as you thought it was? Why did women start wearing dresses in the first place? We need to interrogate that before we can go forward. We need to understand why the ways that we dress are the ways are what we have adopted. Some things you might realize we've adopted because colonization came and there was the moral principles behind that. But essentially, are they really a factor in some of the things that we have to do even to this day? I'm of the belief that whether you're wearing pants or whether you're wearing a dress, whether you're wearing a skirt, it shouldn't determine whether you're less or more of a woman than any other woman, you know. So I would like to see women in the Kotla wearing pants because why
But there's a limit, surely, not short.
Shorts.
But not short.
But not short. Well, the shorts is double-edged sword because even men can't wear shorts in the Kotla. I think it's a respectability politics kind of thing. But
that's the same thing they're saying about pants, because some pants are very much revealing and very much Kotla-like. And the whole idea of the Kotla is a dignified thing. It's comparable to the court.
It is. It is. I would like to compare it to going to meet the Queen. Because I think our Kotla establishments were somewhat also along as time went by, kind of had that spirit of like, you're going to meet the Queen, you're going to meet or Makhosi wa motse. So you have to dress in a dignified manner as well. You have to be present.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying if you're going to wear pants,
yes,
let it be dignified.
Let it be dignified.
Pants.
Yes,
the kind of pants like women wear pants in courts, but they're always sort of dignified.
Yes,
and
essentially.
Yeah, maybe that's that. If I understand you, that's what you're saying.
Essentially,
as long as there's dignity, there's no problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's what it is.
All right. What nuggets of wisdom can you share with us on the importance of personal development? I see that you're familiar with history. I see that you read widely.
The nuggets of wisdom I have in terms of entrepreneurship, I think I've never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I find myself as one. It was a big shift in mindset because I always thought myself I was going to be employed and working for somebody. And you know, the journey of having to be an entrepreneur is not as easy as one would assume it is, because it requires a lot of self-discipline, a lot of it,
a lot of sacrifice.
a lot of sacrifice. It means having to forego a lot of things personally that you find you don't have time for a lot of things that you thought you would have time for. And a lot of people will not understand what you mean in a certain sense. For example, people will just assume because there's clients coming to you all the time, oh my goodness, he's making a lot of money. Hey, we that's a thing that people like say. Yeah. But essentially, at the end of the day, we need to learn that the entity that is the business has to be able to sustain itself. I can't be taking away from it because then it can't grow. We need to have the discipline to be able to take care of it. You're nurturing this and you want it to grow from where it is to something that can exist even when you're not there anymore. So I'd just like to...
So what mind shift did you have to undergo in terms of personal development?
Yeah.
What mind shift do you undergo, and were there any aha moments that you can share?
You have to put your big pants on. I like to call it that. Put your big pants on.
What do you mean by that?
You have to be emotionally aware. You have to be emotionally aware of yourself. Most importantly, your mindset. You as yourself, you have to be of sound mind, because the journey is quite treacherous. You're going to be encountering a lot of different challenges on the way. For example, during the COVID pandemic, or the beginning of it rather, there was a point where we were struggling with rent. We had to now start thinking about rent. How are we going to do? Business still had to continue. Business was continuing, not at that pace that we thought it would, but it was in that moment where we realized, do we jump ship or do we stake it out? Staking it out meant taking the punches and going along with it. And well, we're still here. And that in its own was a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Had you not gone through that, you wouldn't have understood a lot of things to get to this point, which I think if we were to have a similar anything again in the future, you'd know best how to handle it. So
well, I guess then you had to be resilient.
yes, we had to learn how to be resilient and keep up with the times. Fashion has always been something that keeps up with the times. If you look back, you will realize it modifies to what is needed for that time. Yeah.
But you say it keeps up the times, but is it also cyclical? Because at some point bell bottoms were coming back, but they don't seem to have stayed for long.
I think they're still coming back. They're still on the rise. But it's one of those trends. Fashion is cyclical. It's not linear and nothing comes back. It is cyclical. When I was younger, we were a lot into 70s fashion, and I think I love 70s fashion because it's quite conservative. I love it a lot. But currently,
except for those platform boots.
Except for the platform boots and the afro. But currently, the kids are embracing 90s fashion, and I grew up in the 90s. So it's kind of odd seeing all that coming back, and you're just like, really, you guys like this? For me, it's old-fashioned because we did that a long time ago. But you get to see it. But the beauty of it is that it doesn't come back the same way it did then. The new kids kind of breathe a new life into it, and you kind of see it in a different way. Like, that's interesting. And then you
I see a lot of fashion designers, even locally. I had Tobo Gerakan here, of fashion people getting into fragrances as well. Is it an area you're considering, or is it an area you've played before?
In terms of fragrances, I think that's more of a long-term plan. I don't think we're going to be entering that sphere anytime soon. But yes, a lot of fashion brands tend to branch into fragrances because
diversify into fragrances.
They diversify their product portfolios into fragrances because it's one of the markets that tend to move faster in terms of sales. There's a lot of sales in terms of perfumes and colognes.
Why can't you think of a nice fragrance for yourself, and what can your bottle maybe shape it nicely according to your?
I can do that, but I need an aromateur. We can definitely conceptualize that, but the development phase is something that can take.
Is it not within the 5-year development plan? Maybe it's the 10-year.
Maybe 20 years.
Okay.
Yes, but that usually developing a fragrance sometimes can take years. Depending on it, also depend on the level of the market you want to sell at. But it's something that can take a while to get to before you can venture into it.
So I mentioned a few fashion icons at random, but I wonder, just from you, who do you admire out there? Who do you look up to? Who do you wish you could replicate or emulate?
Well, currently, in terms of business, I really look up to, he's a South African designer, his name is Tula Cindy. Tula Cindy, recently, it was before COVID, he went retail and started a chain of stores, Tula Cindy, in South Africa, but with African clothing. Okay. He focuses on women's clothing only. Yes, but I think it's the journey of how he realized, if I'm going to actually conquer the market, I can't do it alone. And it reminds me of the Tswana saying, "Murutoi sikhaweli."
Yes.
So what he did,
crudely translated, one person's urine doesn't flow.
It doesn't flow.
You need multiple urines for there to be flow.
That's true.
That's the direct translation.
Yeah. So he started a fashion retail store called Africa Rise. Africa Rise is a group of fashion designers from South Africa and also from the region, because he's included some designers from Mozambique, some from Namibia as well. So basically, they get to trade or they get to sell their clothing in places where we never thought as African fashion designers we would ever set a foot in, which is like your mainstream malls, your Sandton Center, your Rosebank, you know, the prime areas where you'd think you'd
rent a space there.
Where you'd want to rent a space, because she would rent
is it she?
It's a he.
He would rent a space in in a mall like Senton Mall.
Yes, they do. They actually have a
Rosebank
store
or
there.
something like that.
They actually have a couple of stores in Joburg in quite exclusive areas. So they came together as designers and they have their stores in those locations. But the beauty is that you're not carrying the burden by yourself.
The rental burden.
Yeah, the rental burden, but also the business continuity, the
burden.
administrative side of it as well. So you are able to do so much more because you have the help of every other person. They have a stake in this as well.
Yeah.
And that's what really inspires me, because I loved the way that they took that on upon themselves and just went with it. And it's beautiful to see.
Have you watched the movie The Devil Wears Prada?
Yes.
What do you think of that movie and how does it relate to real life? Yeah, maybe you can just explain to people what the basic message and then tell us whether that relates to your situation in any way.
In any way. Well, The Devil Wears Prada, I know they wanted to focus more on a personal development because it speaks about the young lady. But there's a lot of
especially
gems.
the main character.
The main character. Yes.
Was terrible.
She was terrible, but she represented what fashion used to be then, which was an oligarchy where people dictated it at the top and it trickled down to the bottom. So now fashion has become more democratic, really. But basically, she was talking about, and in her there's like this monologue that she speaks of where she's talking about the cerulean top.
Yeah.
And that in itself just paints a story of how big or how vast the fashion industry is, because she painted a story of something appearing once and then it appeared a couple more times and then it trickled down to a discount store somewhere and in that you realize that you've just roped in so many different people at once, and it's like this big thing because now you're not just talking about the cerulean gown on the runway in New York, in Bryanston. You're now talking about the jobs that you've managed to create in Pakistan. You're talking about the photographers you've managed to employ across the board, from value chain all the way up to luxury. So fashion is not just about the person and that other person. It connects so many different people at once. We employ, for one production or maybe one collection production, we can employ up to more than 30 people just to produce like 10 pieces because the different processes that we have to undergo, including the models as well, the photographers, the video, the sound, then there's the
it's an undertaking.
Yes, then
like
there's
making a movie.
pretty much, and there's the e-commerce side of things, and then you have to involve all the other people who are doing more of the distribution and the warehousing. So it's like a big chain.
Speaking of that, what about having actual shows? Do you see a situation where, for instance, we have Milan, we have Paris, we have Miami. Miami is known more for swimwear and stuff. Is there something along those lines you can think of, Gaborone or Botswana or even Southern Africa having that sort of strong brand that is, look, I'm just, giving you permission to just, think outside the box on that and see whether we can have.
We can. As Africa, as Africa, we have kind of established our identity. Well, we're in the process of establishing identity as a collective. So you have your Fashion Week in Joburg, which is like almost like a representation of Southern Africa. Then you have your Lagos Fashion Week, which is in West Africa, in Nigeria, which is like a representation of West African fashion. And then you have your Swahili Fashion Week in East Africa, which is like representation of East Africa. I didn't know about that one. You did it? Yeah, well, we have like
we have those big three.
Yes. Currently we have that. But then you also have those in the Maghreb region, which is like Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia. They also have they has a fashion week of their own there. So that in itself tells you just how diverse Africa is. Because the fashion you see in Joburg is going to be very different from what you see in West Africa, very different from what you see in East Africa. They don't feature people
from other areas. It's
they do. They do, actually. They do.
Cross-pollination of ideas and fashion.
It is. The cross-pollination of ideas is always going to exist. The same way Burberry, a very British brand, can showcase in Milan, which is in Italy. It's always going to be cross-pollination. And I think those are the strategies that you have as a fashion house. How are we going to penetrate this market? And usually those are the ways that you try to. So there's always going to be cross-pollination. But in terms of creating the fashion capitals of Africa, we are actually in the process of creating that. But the fashion capitals don't just exist as those for Fashion Week. We also have textile trade exhibitions, for example, like the current one, which is happening in Djibouti at the moment. Where
is it as big as the Dubai Expo?
Not necessarily.
Not that to that level.
Not to that level. But for Africa, it's a start because we have a trade exposition where we are able to see innovation in the textile and clothing space in Africa. It's a place where we can come together as Africa and discuss different issues that affect us as an industry. So I really applaud people who can do that because then they're thinking of moving the industry forward.
Can your brand participate in any of these fashion weeks? Do you have these runway setups where you have your models parading?
Yes, we are.
Tell us about that.
We are producing one collection, because essentially if you want to participate in a fashion week and be a resident of that fashion week, you should be able to produce at least 2 collections in a year, which is spring, summer, and fall, winter. So
what does that entail?
A lot of planning, a lot of late nights, a lot of production room.
Yeah. I see 20 people in a factory on sewing machines.
Yes,
I mean,
that sort of thing. That's what it is. That's what it translates into, because the fashion weeks are really a business tool for us. It's a way of us getting out there.
You're still explaining that in order to participate, you need these 2. So what are your plans? What's going on?
We are in the process. We would like to get into Fashion Week. Which is the first step for us would be creating an entity that is able to sustain this consistently, because you can't just present at one and then disappear. You should be able to come back every season. Twice in a year. You should be able to come back, because that builds a reputation for you as well, for the people involved. You're talking magazine editors, you're talking fashion buyers, you're talking as well as other industry people who are able to note you and say, okay, there's this gentleman who does this. We should be able to include him. He's shown us that he's consistent at what he does, and this is what he has to offer. So before we can do that, we really need to create a consistent base for ourselves and say we're committing to this, and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah. You're beginning to gain traction.
We're getting traction. It's one of the things that is currently in the pipeline. I think stay tuned. We should have something underway beginning of next year.
Okay. We will be rewinding this tape.
Yes.
Now, just a little controversy. This idea of having skinny women on the ramp. Why this idea of fashion? And when are we going to just come to accept that beautiful women come in all shapes and sizes?
This is a heated debate across the world, because it's a representation, not just only size, but skin as well, skin tone as well. Talking racial backgrounds, for example. Representation in fashion matters a lot, because before we used to have the slim models who would be what would people would represent, but that's kind of a myopic way of thinking. If you're going to think the only people who wear your clothing are skinny people, or
all I hear is the logical side.
Yeah.
People say this, but in practice,
it's taking a long time.
You go to Miss World, you go to Miss Batswana, skinny tall people.
It's skinny tall people.
That thing seems to be.
It
seems to be stuck with that.
It's more of a business move than anything. But really it's something that really should be changing, and we want to see inclusivity in terms of the shapes and the sizes of women. Women are different, but the same also goes for men. Men are also different. You're gonna have your guy who's probably shorter and not like the tall,
the
built, buffed guy. You know, representation matters, and we would like to see people who are able to speak for us even when we're not there. You see a billboard of just a regular old guy on the billboard. That's what we want to get to, and it's something that I've really thought about, and it's something that we're going to be undertaking a lot in as well. Recently, we've started looking for fit models. The fit models, the models that we use in the design room, who we work with, they test the prototypes and all of that. But we started looking for more plus size, for people of different shapes and sizes, because that's the direction we want to take now. If we are going to be producing clothes for the world, we should be able to take into consideration the different sizes that are there, you know.
Okay. Is there a question that you might have for me, sir? But before you ask me that question, as you're formulating it, 20 years down the line, 10, 20 years, what do you see for Kanyo Fashions?
20 years down the line, I'd like to see us on almost every corner of the world. Maybe not as a flagship, but I'd like to have a footprint across the world in a big way. We would like to see brand longevity more than anything. We would like to see taking identity to, far places across the world. We'd like to see recognition for the work that we do, but I would also like to see the development of our local artisans as well. People who've been in the industry for as long as 30, 50 years. They have a lot of skill. They have a lot of experience, and those people are like people who are there to kind of move people like me forward, because they started somewhere and kind of passing the baton and taking it further. I've had the pleasure of meeting and speaking to a lot of dressmakers in Batswana who've been there for pretty much since almost independence time. That's 1966. That's a long time ago. Who've been doing this, and the immense skill that they have is astounding, because they were able to tell me a lot of things about what they do, and some of them, the skill that they have is phenomenal. I always wondered, some of you people are able to work in ateliers in Paris. I mean, for example, those are the kind of people that they like, and I would love to work with people like that a lot. That is where I would like to go.
Speaking of atelier in practice, how did that name find its way to your name, or part of your name?
Atelier is a French word for studio. So Kanyo M Studio, that's what it basically translates into. So atelier would be a place where we do that the fashion part of it. This is where we conceptualize through
that's
ideas.
Where the name comes from.
That's where the name comes from. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You can hit me with that question, sir.
My question for you is, how do you juggle? How do you do it?
I just do it exactly like you described. It's never one thing at a time. We focus on what we are doing, we try and do it well, and we move on to something else. There's no magic formula. It's all trial and error. And as I've repeatedly said, it's a matter of faith. It's a matter of trying to enthuse, to energize, to empower, and to inspire whoever you come across. And it's a matter of trying to be consistent. Do it when you don't even feel like it. When these youngsters told me that they can't do it on a Thursday, we have to do it on a Tuesday, I had to cancel my other engagements so that I can come and do the interview on a Tuesday. So the idea is that to do stuff that is not comfortable, that is not nice, but do it anyway. You're not doing it for entertainment value, you're doing it for long-term impact. So that's how I approach every business endeavor, that's how I approach every undertaking. Sometimes it works, other times we fall flat on our stomachs and get up again. So, but the whole idea is just to believe in the what I call first principles. As long as you've got your first principles right, and you those first principles, it's like guideposts.
Yeah.
You know your true north.
Yeah.
You know your limits. But as long as something's within your lane, you keep trying this. Wow. So I hope I've answered your question.
You did, and I mean, already I can see myself doing most of the things that you've already mentioned.
Yeah.
Which means I'm on the right track.
You are. Why do you think we had such a beautiful conversation?
I mean,
you're on the right track. I enjoyed our conversation together.
Thank you.
Look at that camera, sir, and tell that viewer your final thoughts and leave them with something inspirational.
My final thoughts on the interview, or just in general? In just
even
general.
the interview, generally. You tell them to subscribe to Mogobe.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It was a pleasure having this conversation, because it's a conversation that I've always wanted to have, and I think you've afforded me that pleasure, and that's beautiful. But what I would like to say, which is to the those who are up and coming, some of them, not to lose faith. I just want to say that, not to lose faith. Currently, we are trying to battle having to lift up an industry from the ground, and it can prove to be a tedious task. Sometimes you want to quit and leave and do something else, but at the end of the day, when you quit and leave and you come back, you're going to always find that you still have this mountain of a task that still needs to be done. So the only way we can do it is if we do it together. I always preach collaboration. Collaboration is key. If you require help for anything, there's other people who are there to assist. If you require wisdom from somebody else, there's always people who are there to assist. I think building a network of people who are able to feed from, but also kind of create a synergy with them, that is something that you really need to equip yourself with in business. And as a creative, you need to start that culture, instill that culture in yourself. I don't exist as a silo. There's other people who are there to assist me. I'm also there to assist them. It's a give and take relationship.
All right, wonderful. Tell them how they can reach you, all your contacts, please.
If you want to see or you want to reach me, I'm available on Instagram. Our page is Kanyo_MBW. I'm available on Facebook, which is under Kanyo_M. That is our page, and you see all our works there as well. But if you would like to book a consultation as well, just shoot us on 7123-2283. This is where we handle all our consultations. You can book one. We can be able to assist Monday to Saturday. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the page. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're a great guest.
Thank you.
Wonders. Thanks.
Thanks.